Chapter 4, Cracks Beneath the Veneer. At first, the travel and lectures offered Dr. Carrington an escape, a reprieve from the weight of his growing practice and the unrelenting expectations he had placed on himself. Each city was a fresh start, an opportunity to bask in the admiration of his peers and the adoration of audiences eager to learn from the man hailed as a pioneer in his field. But as the months turned into years, the lines began to blur. The devoted family man and esteemed professional slowly gave way to someone far more indulgent, far less disciplined. Dr. Carrington's charm, once an asset in the office and lecture halls, began to take on a life of its own. He relished the attention, and soon whispers about his exploits followed him wherever he went. Colleagues at conferences turned knowing glances into hushed conversations, and the women who lingered too long after his lectures only added to the burgeoning myth of Dr. Carrington, the playboy dentist. His reputation grew faster than his practice. Some women drove hours just for a fleeting lunch with him, their cars pulling up outside his office with Washington, D.C. license plates gleaming in the midday sun. Russell Sr., ever the watchful father, couldn't help but notice. One afternoon, he sat silently, his eyes fixed on the steady parade of cars coming and going from the office parking lot. The women left with flustered smiles, their laughter lingering in the air long after they were gone. "It's just lunch, Pop," Russell Jr. said with a dismissive wave when his father broached the subject. "You know how people are. They love a little charm." But Russell Sr. saw more than charm. He saw the cracks forming beneath the polished veneer. He saw the son he had raised teetering on the edge of excess, pulled by the allure of a life far removed from the values he and Genevieve had tried to instill. "Russell," his father said quietly, his voice weighted with concern, "a man can lose himself quicker than he thinks. Don't mistake their attention for respect, and don't let it turn you into someone you're not." But the warning fell on deaf ears. The applause, the admiration, the fleeting encounters, they filled a void that Dr. Carrington couldn't quite name. Each indulgence was a distraction, a momentary high that made it easier to ignore the fractures deepening in his carefully constructed life. Things worsened when Barbara Ann arrived early for her regularly scheduled hair appointment. The whispers had finally reached her ears. Her heart pounded as she sat frozen under the dryer, pretending to read Jet magazine, though the words blurred before her eyes. The women around her spoke in hushed tones, but there was no mistaking the subject. "Girl, you know France's boy looks just like Dr. Carrington." Spitting image. "He come by here all the time, playing while she do hair. Ain't no way Barbara Ann don't know." She got to know by now. Barbara Ann clenched her fists in her lap, pressing her nails into her palms. She wanted to turn around and demand they say it to her face, but she didn't. Instead, she let the hum of the dryer drown out their voices. She left the shop without saying a word, her polished heels clicking against the pavement. The late afternoon sun burned against her skin, but inside she felt cold. She had suspected something. Late nights at the office, vague answers when she asked about his past, but she had never imagined this. That evening, as Dr. Carrington walked through the door, hanging his coat with his usual precision, Barbara Ann stood in the middle of the living room, arms crossed. "Russell," she said, her voice steady but sharp. "Who is Russell III?" He froze, his hands still gripping the hanger. The weight of his secret bore down on him. He had always been so careful. But Baltimore wasn't a city for secrets, not with all those beauty shop conversations and church pew whispers. His mouth opened, then closed. For the first time in his life, Dr. Russell Carrington Jr. had no answer. The silence between them stretched, thick and suffocating. Barbara Ann's eyes never left his face, searching for some flicker of remorse, an explanation, anything. "You heard me," she said, stepping forward. "Who is Russell III?" Dr. Carrington exhaled slowly, gathering himself. He had spent years perfecting the art of control, his words, his image, his reputation, but standing before Barbara Ann now, he realized he had no control over this moment. "He's my son," he finally admitted, his voice quieter than she expected. Barbara Ann's breath hitched, but she willed herself not to react. "And Frances?" Russell hesitated. "I was married to her, briefly." It was annulled. A bitter laugh escaped Barbara Ann's lips before she could stop it. "Annulled? So you thought that erased it? That made it disappear?" She shook her head. "My God, Russell, How long were you going to keep this from me? I was protecting you, he said, stepping closer. Protecting us. It was over before you and I ever— Don't you dare, she cut him off, her voice trembling now. Don't you dare act like this was nothing. A whole child, Russell. A whole child. Right here in this city, with people talking about it in my presence like I'm the fool. Russell closed his eyes, rubbing his temple. He knew he had underestimated Baltimore, a city where everybody knew somebody. He had convinced himself that by keeping quiet, by pushing Francis and Russell III to the periphery of his life, he could rewrite his own story without consequence. But the past wasn't so easily buried. I was going to tell you, he said, though even to his own ears, the words felt hollow. When? Barbara Ann demanded. When he was grown? When some stranger told me instead? Or were you just hoping I'd never find out? Russell had no answer. Barbara Ann inhaled deeply, steadying herself. I need some air. She grabbed her purse and walked past him, leaving the door swinging open in her wake. Dr. Carrington stood in the center of their immaculate home, the silence pressing down heavier than any accusation. For the first time, he realized he might not be able to talk his way out of this. Later that night, Barbara Ann gripped the phone tightly, pacing the length of the kitchen as she waited for an answer. Finally, Dr. Carrington's stepsister, Joyce, sighed on the other end. Hello, why didn't you tell me? Barbara Ann demanded, her voice sharp with betrayal. What did you expect? Joyce shot back. My father and brother would kill me if I got in the middle of Russell's business. And besides, Francis ain't checking for my brother no more. She moved on. Barbara Ann scoffed. Moved on? You mean she moved on with their son? The one I just found out about yesterday? Joyce hesitated. Listen, Barbara Ann, I didn't keep it from you to be cruel. I just knew it wasn't my place. And truth be told, I figured you'd find out eventually. Baltimore's too small for secrets. Barbara Ann ran a hand over her forehead, the weight of it all settling deep in her bones. She had trusted Joyce. Over the years, she had come to see her as family, someone who could level with her about Dr. Carrington's ways. And what about you? Barbara Ann asked. What do you think about all this? Joyce sighed again. I think my brother is who he's always been, a man who hates losing control. And you, Barbara Ann, you're learning the hard way that Russell only tells the truth when he has no choice. Barbara Ann's stomach twisted. She knew Joyce was right. But now that the truth was out, the real question remained. What was she going to do about it? Joyce hesitated before continuing, her voice dropping lower. I've seen the boy a few times. He's a Carrington through and through. Same eyes, same damn walk. You wouldn't need a blood test to know he's Russell's son. Barbara Ann's grip tightened around the phone. I don't want Russell near him or Francis, and he better not be giving them a dime. Joyce sighed. Barbara, you think you can control that man? Russell does what Russell wants, but no, far as I know, he's kept his distance. He ain't exactly a doting father. Barbara Ann exhaled sharply, trying to steady her emotions. Good. He built this life with me, and I'll be damned if I let some woman from his past come knocking at my door. You think Francis wants him back? Joyce asked, almost amused. That woman's got her own life. She ain't chasing Russell. I don't care what she wants, Barbara Ann snapped. I care about what's mine. Joyce went quiet for a moment before speaking again. You sure you're mad at Francis? Or are you mad at Russell? Barbara Ann swallowed hard. She didn't have an answer for that.